Subscribe to the channel right now, hit that like button, and get ready to comment. Pay close attention. Have you ever thought that the greatest betrayal could lead to the most beautiful redemption? If you believe in second chances, this story will touch your heart. The Centennial Gala. The grand ballroom of the Sterling Mansion glittered that evening. Crystal chandeliers reflected the light in thousands of golden shards, like stars captured beneath the vaulted ceiling. The scent of fresh roses, meticulously selected and arranged by Eleanor, blended subtly with the family's signature fragrance, creating an atmosphere of elegance that enveloped the guests like a perfumed embrace. It was the celebration of the centennial of sterling essence, an empire built on the cultivation of rare flowers and the production of the country's most coveted perfumes. You could feel the tension in the air, that almost tangible electricity that precedes great storms. Eleanor felt it, despite the emerald green silk dress that highlighted her eyes and the polite smile she offered the guests. Something in her heart beat unevenly. A premonition, a shadow, or maybe it was just the pregnancy nausea she had been trying to hide for 2 weeks, saving the surprise for the perfect moment. "Is everything all right, my love?" Julian Sterling approached from behind, sliding his hand around Eleanor's waist with the intimate familiarity of someone who knows every curve, every sigh. His woody scent, an exclusive creation she had developed specifically for him, filled her nostrils, bringing a wave of instant comfort. "Of course," she replied, turning on her heels to face her husband, the most powerful man in the city, heir to the perfume empire, the love of her life for 5 years. Just a little tired. The preparations were exhausting. Julian smiled that smile that lit up his green eyes, the same ones she secretly hoped to see in their son, and gently kissed her forehead. "You exceeded all expectations. The arrangements are magnificent. The hall has never looked so beautiful. My father would have been happy to see this." Eleanor felt her heart squeeze. Edward Sterling, the father-in-law she never knew, who died shortly before Julian met her, was a constant presence in family conversations. Unlike Constance Sterling, the matriarch, who never hid her displeasure that her only son was married to a simple florist, as she usually said at family gatherings, masking the insult with an icy smile. As Julian walked away to greet other guests, Eleanor discreetly stroked her still flat stomach. Inside her grew the miracle they had both waited so long for, after countless failed attempts. The news of the pregnancy, confirmed just 3 days ago, was her most precious treasure, saved to be revealed on this special night. The family's private doctor, Dr. Miller, had even teared up when confirming the result to her, knowing the importance of this budding life. "A toast to sterling essence." Julian's powerful voice rang through the hall, silencing parallel conversations. All the guests, the cream of society, influential businessmen, local politicians, raised their glasses in a synchronized movement. Eleanor watched with pride as her husband spoke of family legacy, century-old tradition, expansion plans. It was then that his gaze met hers, and for a second, Eleanor saw something different in those green eyes she loved so much. A shadow, a doubt, a glimpse of something she couldn't define. But soon, he smiled again, continuing his eloquent speech about traditions and the future. The future. Eleanor smiled, thinking of the surprise she would reveal later, perhaps after the party in the privacy of their bedroom, or maybe at the end of the event, as a gift for the whole family. She hadn't decided yet. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she almost didn't notice when Clara, Julian's younger sister, approached her. "He's shining today," commented Clara, a brilliant young woman of 25, who, unlike her mother, always treated Eleanor with genuine warmth. "And you look beautiful, sister-in-law. That dress was made for you." "Thank you, Clara. I really love your blue dress, too. It perfectly highlights your eyes." "Your handiwork," Clara replied, pointing to the small bouquet of forget-me-nots adorning her hair. Delicate flowers Eleanor had picked that morning in the special greenhouse Julian had built for her in the estate's backyard. "No one knows flowers like you, Eleanor. Sometimes I think the plants actually talk to you." Eleanor smiled, feeling a wave of affection for her sister-in-law. "My grandmother used to say, flowers have a soul. They just need someone who knows how to listen to them." The moment of intimacy was interrupted when the butler discreetly approached Julian, handing him an envelope. Eleanor watched, intrigued, as her husband opened the document. His expression changed gradually. His tanned face went pale. His eyebrows rose in shock, and finally, his eyes, those same green eyes she loved so much, darkened with an emotion Eleanor recognized immediately. Fury. Julian crossed the hall with wide strides, clutching the crumpled envelope in his hand. The music stopped abruptly. Guests parted, sensing the disturbing energy radiating from him. Eleanor remained motionless, confused, as he approached with an expression she had never seen before. "How could you?" The words flew out like sharp blades, cutting through the silence that had settled in the hall. "All this time, it was all a lie." "Julian," Eleanor stammered, searching the crowd for Clara's face, for anyone who could explain what was happening. "What are you talking about?" He held up the crumpled envelope. "Dr. Miller finally had the decency to send me my full test results, the ones you obviously already knew about." Eleanor's heart beat faster. What tests? What lie? What was Julian implying in front of all these guests, who were now watching the scene with poorly concealed, avid interest? "I'm pregnant with your child," she whispered, thinking perhaps he had somehow found out about the pregnancy and was hurt he wasn't the first to know. "I was going to tell you today. I wanted it to be special." Julian's bitter laughter interrupted her words. "A child? By me? Impossible, Eleanor. Impossible." He threw the papers in her direction, scattering them across the marble floor. "I have severe azoospermia. Diagnosis confirmed before I even met you. I can never have children. Never." It seemed the whole world stopped spinning. Eleanor felt the ground disappear from under her feet as hundreds of gazes bored into her, judging, sentencing without the right to defense. The accusation hung in the air, crystal clear. "Adultery? No," she stammered, feeling tears burn her eyes. "There must be some mistake. I never cheated." His voice boomed. "The only mistake was trusting you, bringing a stranger into my house, into my family. An opportunist who probably planned everything from the start." The words hit Eleanor like whip cracks. Every syllable, every accusation, every look of contempt she now received from the guests, the same people who minutes before had flattered her elegance and good taste. Clara tried to approach, but was stopped by Constance Sterling's hand, whose expression wavered between feigned shock and poorly concealed satisfaction. "Julian, please," Eleanor pleaded, reaching a trembling hand toward her husband. "Let's talk in private. There must be an explanation." "The explanation is very simple," he snapped, stepping back as if her touch could infect him. "You cheated on me, got pregnant by another man, and tried to pass the child off as mine. What kind of monster would do such a thing?" The word monster echoed through the corners of the hall. Eleanor felt something break inside her. Not just her heart, but her very essence. 5 years of love, devotion, and shared dreams turned to ash in minutes. "I want you out of my house," declared Julian. His green eyes were now cold as lifeless emeralds. "Right now." "You can't be serious," Eleanor muttered in disbelief. "It's raining outside. My things, our plans. Right now!" The scream echoed through the hall, making her recoil in fear. "Take only what you came with. The rest, including the child you carry, does not belong to me." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor looked around, searching for a friendly face. a single ally among this crowd of strangers in evening wear. She found no one. Even Clara lowered her eyes, restrained by the matriarch's firm hand on her shoulder. With what dignity she managed to gather, Eleanor straightened up and walked toward the exit. Every step echoed on the marble like a countdown to a life that was ending. She felt the baby's first kick. Or was it just her imagination, desperately seeking comfort as she crossed the mansion's massive doors? Outside, a storm punished the city. The sky cried relentless tears, as if sharing the pain tearing her chest apart. The green silk dress, carefully chosen for this special evening, clung to her body as she walked aimlessly down the stone path leading to the estate gates. Rain mixed with her tears, creating a salty river flowing down her face. Her disheveled hair framed a devastated face as she clung to the only certainty left. Inside her grew a life she would protect at any cost, with or without Julian. On the horizon, the first lightning bolt cut the sky, momentarily illuminating the path before her. A path unknown, uncertain, but one she would have to walk alone. With one last look back, she saw the imposing Sterling mansion, now just a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. "We'll be okay," she whispered to the tiny being growing in her womb, feeling a resolve born from the ashes of her broken heart. "Mommy promises." And so, under the fury of the storm, Eleanor took the first step into the unknown, carrying with her only the clothes on her back, a wounded dignity, and the most precious of treasures, a son who, though she didn't know it yet, would not come into this world alone. The rain continued to fall relentlessly on her shoulders, while inside the mansion, the party lights continued to shine as if nothing had happened, as if a whole life hadn't collapsed in minutes, as if fate wasn't weaving, at that very moment, the threads of a redemption story that would take 3 long years to begin telling. 3 years later, the return. 3 years can feel like an eternity when every day is a battle, or they can fly by like a sigh when filled with the smiles of 4 little miracles, defying all odds. A spring morning lazily woke up in the small town of Valley of Flowers. Dew still adorned the colorful petals scattered across the gardens when a modest but elegant car crossed the main entrance to the town. It wasn't a luxury vehicle like those usually belonging to the Sterling family, but it carried something far more valuable: the return of a warrior. Eleanor watched familiar streets through the window, feeling her heart race at every recognizable corner, at every memory flashing before her eyes. Her fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel while waiting for the green light, allowing herself a moment of weakness she would never show in public. "Mommy, are we there?" The sleepy voice of Michael, one of the older twins, brought her back to reality. In the back seat, 4 small, identical figures, in pairs, were slowly waking up. 4 pairs of green eyes, intense and deep as emeralds, blinked curiously at the new landscape. "Almost, my love," Eleanor replied, adjusting the rearview mirror to look at those little faces that were the meaning of her life. "This is the town where Mommy was born, where Grandma and Aunt Lisa live. You'll like it." Tim, Michael's identical twin, rubbed his eyes with chubby hands. "Is there a playground?" he asked, always practical in his childish concerns. "There's a beautiful park with a lake full of ducks," Eleanor guaranteed, remembering the city garden, where she walked on Sundays with her parents long before she met the Sterlings, long before her life turned upside down. On the other side of the seat, Gavin and Danny, the younger twins, born just 2 minutes after the first pair, whispered amongst themselves, sharing secrets in their special language that even Eleanor couldn't fully decipher. All 4 boys, now almost 3 years old, were identical within their pairs, but possessed distinct personalities, blossoming a little more each day. And all, without exception, carried the unmistakable Sterling mark. Not just the emerald green eyes, but that small crescent-shaped birthmark at the base of the neck, partially hidden by dark curls. Living proof of the truth no one wanted to hear that fateful stormy night. The traffic light changed, inviting them to continue. Eleanor swallowed hard, gathering all the courage accumulated over the last few years. She was not returning as the same woman who left under rain and humiliation. She was returning transformed, strong, determined. "Let's go, my loves," she said more to herself than to the children. "It's time to show everyone who we really are." The small car moved through tree-lined streets, avoiding the historic center where the main headquarters of Sterling Essence was located. She wasn't ready for that specific confrontation yet. First, she needed to lay her foundations, root herself again in the soil that once saw her grow. Her mother Amelia and her Aunt Lisa's house was on the outskirts of town. A simple, cozy structure surrounded by a lush garden that had always been a natural laboratory where Eleanor learned her first secrets about botany. It was there, as a girl, she developed her passion for medicinal plants, inheriting knowledge passed down through generations of women in her family. "Eleanor, my daughter!" Amelia's excited voice echoed through the garden as soon as the car parked. A woman with gray hair, a kind face marked by years, and hands toughened by constant work. With the earth ran like a young girl to meet her daughter and grandchildren. Behind her, Aunt Lisa, a younger and more energetic version of her mother, smiled through held-back tears. It seemed a dam burst inside Eleanor. All the composure carefully built over the last few years dissolved the moment she felt her mother's warm embrace. For a few seconds, she allowed herself to be just a daughter seeking comfort, not the strong woman she had to become. "Mom," she whispered into silver hair, inhaling the familiar scent of dried herbs and unconditional love. "We're home." The quadruplets watched the scene with childish curiosity, still strapped into their seats in the back. It was Gavin, always the most impatient, who broke the moment. "Mommy want out," he complained, squirming restlessly. His small hands tried to reach the seatbelt buckle. Laughter filled the air when Amelia finally saw 4 pairs of green eyes watching her from the car. "Oh my God," she exclaimed, bringing her hands to her face. "They are the spitting image of the Sterlings," Eleanor added, a bittersweet smile on her lips as she began releasing the boys one by one. The final details. The quadruplets scattered across the garden like a small reconnaissance squad, fascinated by colorful flowers, buzzing insects, and freedom after the long car ride. Aunt Lisa immediately rushed after them to ensure they didn't destroy the daisy bed or climb the fruit tree whose low branches seemed particularly attractive. "Wonderful children," commented Amelia, watching her grandchildren with adoration. "And so big. Photos don't capture it." "They grow too fast," Eleanor agreed, feeling the familiar prick in her heart at the thought of all the moments Julian missed. First steps, first words, feverish nights, mornings of discovery. Despite everything, she never stopped regretting that he couldn't witness the miracle they created together. Amelia, with that intuition only mothers possess, gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "Are you ready for this? To face them again?" Eleanor took a deep breath. Her eyes followed the children, who now surrounded Aunt Lisa, begging for stories about the magic plants she grew. "I didn't come for conflict, Mom. I came to take our place in this town, a place they deserve." "The Sterlings won't make it easy," the woman warned. Worry was evident in her words. Especially Constance. That woman never accepted her son marrying someone outside their social circle. A determined smile appeared on Eleanor's lips. "I'm no longer the naive girl they knew. I learned to play, Mom, and I learned well." Inside the cozy house, while the boys devoured homemade cookies under the delighted supervision of their great-aunt, Eleanor shared her plans. The small natural cosmetics business she started as a hobby during her marriage had grown beyond expectations. With initial financial support from her mother and aunt, who invested their life savings in the project, Eleanor turned knowledge and pain into a promising company. Flora Essence already has distribution in 3 regions, she explained, showing elegant catalogs of her product line. We started with moisturizers, but now we have perfumes, essential oils, handmade soaps, everything based on Grandma's formulas with my adaptations. It's small compared to the Sterling Empire, but it's growing organically. Amelia flipped through the catalog with obvious pride. Your formulas were always special, Eleanor. You have your grandmother's gift. You know how to see beyond the known properties of plants. And the plot? Asked Aunt Lisa, returning to the kitchen after sending the boys to play in the yard. Did you manage to close the deal? Eleanor's smile widened. We signed the papers last week. It's officially ours. The plot next door to the Sterling estate. Amelia nearly choked on her tea. The one with its own spring and rare flowers? Eleanor nodded. Satisfaction was evident in her gaze. That very one. The former owner desperately needed cash. After some bad investments, we managed to get it at a great price. Oh my God, daughter. Aunt Lisa couldn't suppress a nervous chuckle. You really came back to shake the foundations of this town. The joyous sound of children playing in the yard filtered through the open windows, creating the perfect soundtrack for this moment of revelations. Eleanor watched her sons through the kitchen window. So small, so innocent, so unsuspecting of the storm their very existence was about to cause. It's not revenge, she clarified, though part of her knew that wasn't entirely true. It's justice and opportunity. That plot is perfect for expanding our production. It has the perfect microclimate for growing the rarest species I use in my exclusive formulas. And the fact that it's next door to the mansion of the family that publicly humiliated you is just a happy coincidence, teased Aunt Lisa with a mischievous smile. Eleanor allowed herself a moment of genuine candor. Let's just say the location has additional strategic advantages. The 3 women exchanged a conspiratorial look, the type of understanding that goes without words. Eleanor's family had always been her safe haven, her foundation. It was to them she returned that stormy night, soaked, humiliated, pregnant, and desperate. It was they who accepted her without judgment, wiped her tears, helped her up when it seemed the world had collapsed on her shoulders. And what about the boys? Asked Amelia, voicing the concern hovering in the air. When do you plan to tell the truth about their father? The question hit Eleanor like a stone. For 3 years, they shielded the children from a truth even she didn't fully understand. On the rare occasions they asked about Daddy, she answered with vague stories about a good man who lives far away. But she knew that explanation wouldn't last forever. I don't know yet, she admitted, feeling the weight of this decision. Part of me wants Julian to know them, to see with his own eyes that they are his sons, that this is the truth he refused to listen to. The other part fears he might reject them again, added Aunt Lisa, always direct. Or worse, try to take them from you. Eleanor nodded, a lump in her throat. They are everything to me, everything I have left. If Julian decides he wants to be a father now, he doesn't have that right, interrupted Amelia, with unusual firmness in her gentle voice. Not after what he did, abandoning a pregnant woman in the rain without the right to defense, without even checking the facts. Laws don't always protect those who deserve it, Mom, reasoned Eleanor, and the Sterlings have power and influence in this town. The ensuing silence was filled only by the crystal laughter of children in the yard, a reminder of what was truly at stake, what needed protecting at all costs. For now, Eleanor decided finally, we settle in, start building the factory. When they are ready for preschool, we enroll them in the Grove School. The school sponsored by the Sterlings? Exclaimed Aunt Lisa, surprised. Are you sure about this? A mysterious smile appeared on Eleanor's lips. It's the best school in town, My children deserve the best. Besides, her eyes shone with determination. It's time to plant some strategic seeds. At that same moment, a few kilometers away, in the imposing office of Sterling Essence, Julian was reviewing financial spreadsheets with visible concern on his face. Mark, his best friend and company accountant for nearly 10 years, presented numbers that seemed increasingly bleak. Investments in international expansion aren't bringing the expected return, Mark explained, adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses. The Asian market proved harder to penetrate than we expected, and a new competitor in the natural cosmetics sector is growing fast. A new competitor? Julian looked up from the papers. A wrinkle of worry formed between his brows. Flora Essence, informed Mark, sliding a catalog across the desk. Small for now, but gaining space fast. Products are fully organic, sustainable, with strong emotional appeal. Exactly the type of brand young consumers adore. Julian absent-mindedly flipped through the catalog until his eyes caught a detail at the end of the last page. A small symbol, almost unnoticeable. A stylized lotus flower, identical to the one Eleanor used to draw in her research notes. His heart skipped a beat. "Who owns this company?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral, though he already suspected the answer. Mark hesitated for a moment. A flicker of discomfort crossed his gaze. "Former botany student of the Federal University, specialist in medicinal plants, Eleanor Vance." The name hit Julian like a punch to the gut. Eleanor. 3 years without speaking that name, without letting others strike it in his presence. 3 years trying to forget the scent of jasmine she left in the air, the sound of her laugh on Sunday mornings, the texture of her skin under his fingers. "She's back in town," continued Mark, closely watching his friend's reaction. "I heard she bought a plot of the old Ryabov farm, the plot next to our estate." Julian felt his throat go dry. Impossible. Ryabov would never sell to a stranger. It seems he had no choice. He was on the verge of bankruptcy. Mark adjusted his glasses again, a nervous gesture Julian knew well. There was something else his friend wasn't saying. "Spit it out, Mark," he demanded, leaning his elbows on the desk and leaning forward. "What else do you know?" The accountant took a deep breath, like someone preparing to drop a bomb. "She didn't come back alone, Julian. She brought children." "Children?" The word came out as a strangled gasp. "Twins," replied Mark, looking away. "2 pairs of twins, actually. Quadruplets. Boys." Julian felt the world spinning around him. 4. How is that possible? He wanted to ask more, demand details, confirm if they were. No, impossible. My medical condition was clear. Dr. Miller explained in detail. Severe azoospermia, inability to have children. That's exactly why. A lump formed in his throat as the memory of that terrible night returned with full force. The public accusation, Eleanor's devastated look, the rain whipping her shoulders as she left the mansion, banished like a criminal. "When?" was all he could ask. His voice turned into a hoarse whisper. "Arrived this morning," replied Mark, finally finding the courage to look at his friend. "And Julian, people say the boys have—" "What?" he demanded, restraining himself from grabbing the accountant by the shirt. "Green eyes," finished Mark. "Green, like yours." The office plunged into silence as Julian digested this information. Overcome with emotion, he walked across the space to the panoramic window, offering a privileged view of the town. Somewhere down there, Eleanor had returned with 4 boys with green eyes. 4 boys who couldn't be his, but who by some cruel twist of fate bore the sterling mark. "I need to see them," he decided suddenly, turning on his heel. "Julian, think carefully," warned Mark, standing up. "Your mother will be devastated if she finds out you looked for Eleanor, after everything that happened." "My mother doesn't need to know my every move," Julian snapped. "And neither do you." Mark's hurt look didn't go unnoticed, but Julian was too agitated to care. The storm of emotions he thought tamed years ago was returning with full force, threatening to sweep away everything he had built in her absence. Eleanor was back, and for the first time in 3 years, Julian realized he had never truly been able to let her go. Meanwhile, in the garden of Amelia's house, the quadruplets chased colorful butterflies. Their musical laughter filled the air with contagious joy. Eleanor watched them from the porch. Her heart was torn between overwhelming love for her children and the premonition of the inevitable confrontation approaching. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. It was an email confirming the boys' enrollment at the Grove School for the semester, starting in 2 weeks. The first seed was planted, the board set, and now it remained to wait for the next move. "We are ready to play," she whispered to herself as the sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky a valley of flowers in orange and pink tones, reminiscent of the dahlia petals Julian had once planted for her. You can feel the strength sprouting from pain, turned into purpose. Can you see how love for children can turn fragility into impenetrable armor? This is the story of a woman who not only survived the storm, but learned to dance in the rain, growing rare flowers on soil everyone thought barren. Eleanor's return to Valley of Flowers was just the beginning. The seeds of truth now planted would require time, sun, and even a few storms to fully bloom. And when they do, no one, not even the powerful Sterlings, will be able to deny their undeniable beauty. The Grove School rose majestically in the center of Valley of Flowers. Its brick walls were covered in climbing ivy. The Sterling family crest adorned the main gate, a reminder of who had funded this institution for 5 generations. On the first day of class, Eleanor adjusted her son's small backpacks. The quadruplets, impeccable in their uniforms, attracted curious glances everywhere. "Remember what we talked about?" she said, bending down to be at eye level with the green eyes looking at her. "Be kind to everyone. Listen to the teachers. If someone asks about Daddy, we say he lives far away," finished Michael, always the most sensible. "And that one day we will meet him," added Tim, with innocent confidence. Gavin and Danny, the younger twins, exchanged conspiratorial looks before nodding in perfect sync. "Exactly," she confirmed. "And remember, you have each other always." "I'll look after the little ones," promised Michael, naturally taking on the leader role. "And I'll look after Michael," added Tim, making Eleanor laugh. Handing the children to the teacher, Eleanor watched them walk single file. Michael in front, followed by Tim, Gavin, and Danny, each holding onto the brother's backpack ahead like an unbreakable chain. "Charming children," commented a female voice beside her. Eleanor saw an elegant woman with brown hair in a bun and kind eyes that seemed genuinely interested. "Thank you," she replied, instinctively cautious. "I'm Caroline Miller," introduced the woman. "My daughter Sophia is also starting today." The surname didn't go unnoticed. "Miller, like the Sterling family doctor." "Eleanor Vance," she replied, accepting the greeting. "Eleanor Vance, from Flora Essence?" Caroline's eyes lit up. "I use your rosehip serum every night. It's simply a miracle for my sensitive skin." The sincerity of the compliment surprised Eleanor. "Glad you like it. We developed it specifically for sensitive skin. My husband would be interested to hear about it. He's a dermatologist, Dr. Edward Miller." "Dr. Miller?" Eleanor ventured. "Edward Miller," confirmed Caroline. "Son of Dr. Augustus Miller, the Sterling family doctor. Do you know them?" Eleanor's heart beat faster. This was the daughter-in-law of the doctor who handed those fabricated tests to Julian. "Knew a very long time ago," she replied evasively. "Julian and I had a relationship." Recognition lit up Caroline's eyes. "Ah, you're that Eleanor. My father-in-law mentioned—" "Well, he never went into details, but—" Caroline hesitated before continuing. "You know, my father-in-law never felt comfortable when your name came up. Edward always thought there was something strange about that whole story, especially because Mommy? A little girl with long brown hair interrupted what promised to be an interesting revelation. Caroline smiled apologetically. Duty calls. It was nice meeting you, Eleanor. Maybe coffee sometime? With pleasure, replied Eleanor, genuinely interested in continuing this conversation. Constance Sterling always believed she perfectly controlled every aspect of her life. Her visit to the Grove School coincided with the annual science fair, an event she usually enjoyed. Strolling between tables of experiments, her attention was completely captured by a project in the furthest corner of the hall. A table set with various plants organized in small labeled pots attracted a small crowd. 4 boys, identical in pairs, took turns talking about the region's medicinal plants. There was something familiar about these boys. She approached slowly. This is Calendula officinalis, explained one of the boys, holding an orange flower. My mom uses it in a healing cream we make at home. Constance felt her legs give way when the third boy turned to her. Those eyes, green as emeralds, intense, with the specific sterling shine. The same face shape, the same dimple in the chin that Julian had as a child. Are you okay? He asked, noticing her pallor. Want to smell lavender? It helps when you're dizzy. What is your name, dear? Michael Vance, he replied, straightening his shoulders with pride. And these are my brothers Tim, Gavin, and Danny. We are quadruplets. Quadruplets. The word echoed in Constance's head. 4 boys with sterling eyes, with Eleanor's surname. Where is your mother? Mommy is working, replied Tim. Grandma Amelia and Aunt Lisa came with us today. As if in response, Amelia appeared, freezing upon recognizing the matriarch. The 2 women looked at each other in tense silence. Constance, greeted Amelia with a short nod. Amelia, replied the matriarch. Are these my grandchildren? Confirmed Amelia, standing protectively between the older woman and the children. Eleanor's sons. Leaving the school, long-suppressed memories assaulted Constance's mind. Edward, her other son who died as an infant. The transfer of all her expectations onto Julian, the surviving son. The painful fear of losing him too, to death, to illness, to an unsuitable woman. My God, she whispered to herself, what have we done? In the improvised lab in her backyard, Eleanor was working on a new essential oil formula when the doorbell rang. Opening it, she wasn't prepared to find Clara Sterling on the doorstep. Eleanor! Clara's voice trembled slightly. Can I come in? After a brief hesitation, Eleanor let her in, pouring tea while analyzing the situation. You look good, Clara commented. Actually, you look amazing, strong, determined. Raising 4 children alone does that to a person, Eleanor replied with slight acidity. But you didn't come here to comment on my appearance. No, not for that. I came because I need your help, and because I think I can help you. My help? With what? Chemistry, replied Clara. A shine appeared in her eyes. I'm a certified chemist, specializing in organic compounds. I researched essential oils for my doctoral thesis. And what does that have to do with me? Your products, Eleanor, are revolutionary. Clara leaned forward. I analyzed your rosehip serum. The stabilization you achieved without synthetic preservatives is simply genius. Eleanor allowed herself a small smile of pride. Family secret. I want to work with you, proposed Clara directly. Would your mother allow it? And your brother? Clara straightened her shoulders. I'm 28 years old, Eleanor. I don't need permission. Besides, they don't need to know. Not at first. Why, Clara? Why now, after all this time? Because I never believed you cheated on my brother, she answered finally. Because I spent 3 years watching Julian turn into a shadow of the man he was, and because I think I finally understand what happened that night. Eleanor felt her heart beat faster. Go on. Remember the tests Julian received during the party? I found copies in Father's office. I compared them with Julian's other medical reports. The signatures don't match, revealed Clara. The report proving severe azospermia has Dr. Miller's signature, but it's noticeably different from his other signatures. You're implying the report was forged. But why? Clara looked away. My mother was always obsessed with family lineage. When Julian announced he was going to marry you, someone outside our social circle, she was devastated. She forged the results to separate us, finished Eleanor, feeling nauseous. But that is too cruel. My mother lost a son before Julian was born, explained Clara. Edward died of a rare genetic disease. Since then, she became almost paranoid about the purity of the Sterling lines. I need concrete evidence, stated Eleanor. If I'm going to confront Julian, or his mother, I need absolute certainty. The sound of children's voices in the garden announced the boy's return. Eleanor cast a meaningful glance at Clara. They might see you here, she warned. Not yet. That would be too confusing. When can I come back so we can discuss all this and my job offer? Tomorrow at 2 p.m., decided Eleanor. I'll be at the new plot overseeing the start of factory construction. In the private office he had maintained for nearly 5 decades, Dr. Augustus Miller looked at the results of his own tests with resignation. The diagnosis was unambiguous. Advanced cancer. 6 months max. 6 months to put affairs in order, to fix some mistakes he made over so many years serving the Sterlings. The doctor opened the bottom drawer of his desk, the one he always kept locked. From there, he pulled a folder yellowed with time labeled S, confidential on the cover. Inside were Julian's real test results. Moderate oligospermia, he read aloud. Reduced sperm count, but fertility not completely lost. Not severe azoospermia, as the fake report claimed. The weight of this lie he carried for 3 years seemed unbearable now that he knew his days were numbered. He conspired with Constance to separate a loving couple, destroy a reputation, deny a man knowledge of his own children. Enough, he muttered to himself. It was time to fix this. Picking up the phone, he dialed a number he knew by heart. I need to see you today, he said, when the familiar voice answered. It's about Eleanor and those tests. On the other end of the line, Constance Sterling felt her blood run cold. The Festival of Flowers. The annual Festival of Flowers transformed Valley of Flowers into an open-air garden. That year, the festival took on added importance for Eleanor. Flora Essence would be officially introduced to local society with a booth strategically located opposite the Sterling Essence booth. Eleanor, with Clara's help, developed 3 new products for launch: a soft perfume, a fast-absorbing body oil, and a rejuvenating face mask made from the extract of a rare regional flower. The quadruplets appeared in matching outfits that highlighted their green eyes, looking like miniature versions of Julian. Eleanor would never get used to the striking resemblance. The festival was to be opened by the mayor, followed by a speech from a Sterling family representative, usually Julian. This year, Eleanor was invited to speak as a representative of the new generation of local entrepreneurs. It would be the first time she and Julian would meet face to face since that stormy night 3 years ago. Are you ready for this? Asked Aunt Lisa. As ready as I can be, replied Eleanor, instinctively smoothing her sea-green dress. A color chosen intentionally to complement, but not imitate, the traditional Sterling emerald green. The sun began to set. Elegant lanterns lit up automatically, and Eleanor's heart accelerated in anticipation of the inevitable meeting that years of fate had prepared. The large central tent of the flower festival was packed. On stage, decorated with lush floral arrangements, Mayor Gregory was adjusting the microphone, preparing to officially start the festivities. Eleanor watched everything from the side of the stage. Her eyes instinctively sought Julian in the front rows. She found him sitting next to Constance, the rigid matriarch in her traditional dark green suit. Nervous? Clara's voice made Eleanor jump. Alert, corrected Eleanor, allowing herself a small smile. Too many variables in this equation tonight. The mayor began his speech, forcing them both to retreat further into the shadows of the wings. Eleanor felt her heart beat faster, when the man mentioned new ventures and local talents returning to their roots. Clear references to Flora Essence. This year, we have the special pleasure of welcoming the return of a daughter of Valley of Flowers, who is revolutionizing the natural cosmetics market, announced the mayor. But first, we will hear from the president of Sterling Essence, whose sponsorship has made this festival possible for over 50 years. Julian rose with studied elegance, buttoning his jacket in an automatic gesture. Eleanor instantly recognized the nervous habit he always had before public speaking. "Good evening, everyone," Julian's low voice boomed. "With honor, Sterling welcomes another annual flower festival." Eleanor watched him closely. He seemed thinner, with fine worry lines that weren't there 3 years ago. His gestures were more restrained, his posture stiffer. "And now," announced the mayor after polite applause, "I have the immense pleasure of inviting to the stage the founder of Flora Essence, an entrepreneur conquering the national market with all natural products. Ladies and gentlemen, Eleanor Vance." The whisper running through the audience was almost palpable. From her position, Eleanor saw the exact moment Julian froze. His expression shifted from diplomatic to shocked. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor walked to the center of the stage with her head held high. She wore no extravagant jewelry, only a delicate necklace with a lotus flower pendant, her personal symbol and company logo. "Good evening, Valley of Flowers," she began. Her voice was steady despite the emotional whirlwind in her chest. "It is with great joy I return to the city that saw my birth, bringing with me not just memories, but dreams turned into reality." It was then that a small commotion at the tent entrance attracted everyone's attention. Eleanor felt her blood run cold when she recognized the protagonists of the turmoil. Her 4 children, who should have been safe at the booth, were now running down the center aisle toward the stage. "Mommy!" shouted Gavin, always the most impulsive. "Look what happened!" Danny held what appeared to be a broken small pot. Michael and Tim tried to stop them, but unsuccessfully. The audience watched the scene with varying degrees of amusement, but Eleanor could register only one reaction: Julian's. He stood up abruptly. His green eyes were glued to the 4 boys who were his miniature copies. "Sorry for the interruption." Eleanor tried to smooth the situation, smiling nervously. "It seems my assistants have a botanical emergency." Polite laughter rippled through the audience, but it quickly died down when Michael, trying to stop Gavin, tripped and fell. His shirt rode up enough to reveal the small, crescent-shaped birthmark that all 4 boys had. The same mark all Sterling men had worn for generations. A collective gasp swept through the tent. Constance pressed a hand to her chest. Her usually impassive face was now distorted in absolute shock. "We need to go, Mommy," insisted Danny. "Grandma's special plant broke." Eleanor came down from the stage, trying to maintain composure. "We'll fix it, darling." But Mommy was busy with something important. It was then she felt a presence behind her. Julian approached, eyes fixed on the boys. "Eleanor." His voice was just a hoarse whisper. She straightened slowly, instinctively standing between him and the children. "Julian, they—" Julian couldn't finish the sentence. "Yes," confirmed Eleanor, holding her head high. "These are your sons." The buzz spreading through the tent was instantaneous. Phones were raised, recording the moment. "Is that the daddy who lives far away?" asked Tim, tugging at Eleanor's dress hem, as if those simple words broke something inside Julian. His face distorted, in an expression of such intense pain that Eleanor almost took a step toward him. "We need to leave," she decided, taking the children by the hands. "No!" Julian's voice sounded louder than he intended. "Please, don't go," Clara intervened. "Dr. Miller's office is 2 blocks from here. It's empty at this time. You can talk there in private." Julian cast a confused look at his sister, clearly surprised by her intervention, but nodded slowly. "Please," he asked, looking Eleanor straight in the eye for the first time. "We need to talk." The revelation. Dr. Augustus Miller's office retained the same vintage decor Eleanor remembered. Sitting in an uncomfortable triangle, Eleanor and Julian on opposite chairs, Clara standing by the window. Heavy silence seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. "How?" was all Julian could ask. "The traditional way, Julian," Eleanor replied, unable to hold back sarcasm. "It happens when two people love each other, or think they do. The diagnosis." Julian looked confused. "Dr. Miller said I had severe azoospermia, that I couldn't have children." "The diagnosis was false," intervened Clara. "The report was fabricated." He looked at his sister in disbelief. "Why would anyone forge my tests?" The office door opened unexpectedly, revealing Constance and Dr. Miller himself. "Because I asked," declared Constance. Her voice trembled. "Because I ordered him to lie to you." The shock on Julian's face was indescribable. He had never seen his mother admit any mistake. "Mom," the word came out like a plea. Dr. Miller moved slowly to his chair. "Your real diagnosis," he said, pulling an old folder from a drawer, "was moderate oligospermia, reduced sperm count, but you were quite capable of conceiving, though with lower probability." Eleanor felt tears of anger burn her eyes. "So you lied to me? You destroyed our marriage based on a lie?" The doctor just nodded heavily. "And now I pay the price. I have 6 months to live, no more. I cannot leave carrying this secret." Julian, pacing like a caged beast, turned to his mother. "Why?" Constance seemed to have aged 10 years that night. For the first time, the matriarch allowed her emotions to fully show. "Because I was afraid," she admitted, voice breaking. "Afraid of losing you like I lost your brother. Afraid that an unsuitable bloodline might bring back the same genetic disease that took Edward." "Edward?" Julian frowned. "My father never had a brother named Edward." "Not a brother," corrected Constance. Tears flowed down her face. "A son. Our first son. Your older brother, who died before you were born." Clara covered her mouth with her hands, also shocked. "He was only 6 months old," continued the matriarch. "Rare genetic disease. Doctors said it was hereditary. When you were born healthy, I thought we were blessed. I promised I would do anything to protect you. So you decided to control my entire life," concluded Julian with an icy voice. "She did more than that," intervened Dr. Miller. "The documents Eleanor brought at the start of the marriage, about her family's medical history. Constance asked me to check if there were any worrying genetic conditions." "And did you find anything?" asked Eleanor. "Nothing worrying," assured the doctor. "On the contrary, I discovered a much more interesting connection." He turned to Constance. "You must tell him about the formulas too, about the true origin of the sterling fortune." "What formulas?" demanded Julian. Dr. Miller took a deep breath. "The original formulas of the first sterling perfumes were not created by your great-grandfather. They were bought for a pittance from Eleanor's great-grandmother during the great drought that devastated the region almost 100 years ago." Eleanor felt as if the earth disappeared from under her feet. "Maria Vance," the doctor continued, "a woman with extraordinary knowledge of plants and their essences, sold her formulas to save her family from starvation in exchange for a promise that she would always be recognized as co-creator." He cast an accusing look at Constance. "A promise that was never kept." "The original documents of that deal still exist," confirmed Constance. "In the mansion safe, kept secret by 3 generations." Julian seemed on the verge of collapse. "So everything, absolutely everything I believed about our family, about myself, was a lie?" Eleanor, still digesting multiple revelations, realized there was something else to clarify. "The quadruplets," she said finally. "How is it possible?" Dr. Miller seemed momentarily soothed by the shift to a more scientific topic. "Extremely rare phenomenon, but documented. You had a dizygotic multiple pregnancy. 2 eggs were fertilized simultaneously. Each of those embryos split again, resulting in 2 pairs of identical twins." A sudden coughing fit interrupted his explanation. The doctor covered his mouth with a handkerchief that quickly stained red. "I need to rest," he murmured, recovering. But before that, he pulled an extra folder from the drawer, handing it to Eleanor. "Full results of tests conducted during your pregnancy. Irrefutable proof of Julian's paternity." Eleanor accepted the folder with trembling hands, feeling the weight of the document that could have prevented 3 years of separation. "Why didn't you show me this before?" she asked with a strangled voice. "Because you never looked for me," the doctor replied simply. "And because I was too cowardly to look for you myself." Julian approached hesitantly. "May I?" Eleanor handed him the documents, watching as he flipped through pages that confirmed. The quadruplets were unequivocally his sons. "4 sons," Julian murmured, his voice mixed disbelief and reluctant joy. "I have 4 sons." "Yes," confirmed Eleanor. "4 sons you never knew because you chose to believe the worst about me without giving me a chance to defend myself." Julian looked up from the documents, looking at her with devastating intensity. "I know, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to fix that mistake. If you let me." Constance took an uncertain step toward Eleanor. "I too must apologize, not only for what I did to you and my son, but for what my family did to yours so many years ago." "I suggest we continue this conversation tomorrow," said Dr. Miller. His pale face testified to his deteriorating health. Clara nodded, approaching Eleanor. "I'll drive you home. The boys must be worried." The mention of children seemed to wake something in Julian. "Can I see them again? Meet them? Properly?" The vulnerability in his voice almost broke Eleanor's resolve. In his green eyes, the same ones their sons inherited, she saw the man she fell in love with, not the one who humiliated her publicly. "Tomorrow," she conceded finally. "Come to my house after lunch. They are usually calmer then." The relief on Julian's face was palpable, as if she had offered him not only the chance to know his children, but a second chance at life. The new beginning. Leaving the office with Clara, Eleanor felt a strange lightness, despite the emotional storm of the evening. Truths long buried had finally surfaced. Secrets poisoning generations were revealed. The path ahead would be complex, requiring difficult negotiations, conditional forgiveness, and gradual rebuilding of trust. But for the first time in 3 years, Eleanor allowed herself to imagine a future where her children could know their father, where old injustices could be corrected. You can feel that peculiar mix of pain and relief accompanying belated revelations. Eleanor feels it with every fiber of her being, walking home where 4 pairs of green eyes eagerly await news about the man who until this evening was only a misty figure in their little minds. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Tomorrow, 4 children will truly meet their father. Tomorrow, negotiations on rights, recognitions, and long-denied compensations will begin. Tomorrow, first steps toward reconciliation will be taken. Not necessarily romantic, but definitely necessary for the healing of all involved. But this evening is to breathe, to process, to allow old wounds to finally start healing under the balm of revealed truth. 1 year later, the opening of the new wing of the Valley of Flowers Children's Hospital attracted the entire community. Eleanor looked with satisfaction at the commemorative plaque, the Maria Vance Wing, a legacy of healing shared by the Vance and Sterling families. Beside her, the quadruplets, now almost 4 years old, were elegantly dressed for the occasion. Julian, sitting on the other side of the boys, discreetly leaned over, helping Gavin with a stain on his bow tie. A small gesture of paternal help warmed Eleanor's heart. The past year was full of deep transformations. The commercial partnership between Flora Essence and Sterling Essence surprised the market, combining century-old tradition with sustainable innovation, leading to the creation of a line of therapeutic products inspired by Eleanor's great-grandmother's original notebooks. Now finally recognized as co-founder of the perfume empire. More importantly, it was a year of carefully rebuilding personal bridges. Julian became a constant presence in the boys' lives, starting with short supervised meetings, gradually moving to weekend outings, and recently sleepovers at the Sterling mansion. As for the relationship between Eleanor and Julian, it evolved at its own cautious pace. Wounds were too deep for miraculous healings, but small moments of genuine connection happened more often. It wasn't rekindled love yet. It was too early for that. But it was respect. It was understanding. It was mutual recognition that in the good moments they shared, there was value and potential to build something new and stronger. And now, announced the mayor, I have the pleasure of inviting to the stage representatives of the families who made this project possible, Eleanor Vance and Julian Sterling. As they walked together to the stage, Eleanor felt Julian's hand lightly touch hers. Not a possessive gesture, but a quiet offer of support. She allowed their fingers to intertwine for a moment before climbing the steps. At the microphone, Eleanor looked at the audience, her mother and aunt in the second row, Clara holding little Sophia on her lap, Constance visibly moved, and her 4 sons, who now knew and loved their father. This hospital wing represents more than walls and equipment, declared Eleanor. It represents the healing of old wounds, the union of complementary knowledge, the transformation of rivalry into cooperation. And above all, it represents the truth that the strongest seeds often sprout from the most unlikely soils. When Julian stepped up for his speech, his eyes met Eleanor's with the same intensity that years ago made her heart beat faster for the first time. But now, that look carried not only passion, but gratitude, respect, and the promise of a future built not on illusions, but on truth. You can smell the scent of new flowers blooming after the storm, the soft fragrance of reconciliation, the subtle bouquet of reborn hope. This is not a perfect garden. Some beds still show scars of the passing storm. But it is a living garden, blooming, and above all, cultivated with honesty and constant dedication. This is the true essence of Eleanor and Julian's story. Not a fairy tale where everything is solved magically, but a human journey, imperfect and real, of people who learned that even the most devastated lands can, with time and proper care, bloom again. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below. Do you think Eleanor should forgive Julian romantically, or is co-parenting enough?